Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. I know I shouldn't, but I'm going to go ahead and set the record straight, and then I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing regarding the whole Iran situation before my Sunday address, and that is, not discuss it. Now, before the Sunday address, I hadn't said anything about it, and there were people wondering what my thoughts were about Israel bombing Iran, and well, as one of the thought leaders of black empowerment, I don't tend to waste time on things that I already know aren't going to go anywhere. Whenever I post a morning briefing or a Sunday address, what I try to focus on is what I think is going to be important not just now, but into the future. Not everything that makes headlines makes sense for me to comment on. The white media can make a fuss about something, but that doesn't make it important. Take the war in Iran as a case study. I felt no need to say anything because it was readily apparent to me what was really going on and that it wasn't that serious. The situation regarding the illegal immigrant crackdown and how Democrats are hoping to use it as a springboard for their 2026 outreach is far more pertinent. Now, of course, it's not the only thing that deserves our attention, but I do think that it's important to focus on it. And that's the reason why there's certain people who have been going nuts these last few days because I was making it a point to highlight this. You can tell when you've been doing some damage because the hit dogs start hollering. The tethers have been in a tizzy because of the briefings I posted the last few days, and you can tell they desperately want to change the subject. So they've been spamming my comment section saying, "Why don't you talk about Iran? We're about to have World War III. It's going to be World War III out here, and you're talking about illegal aliens. What's wrong with you?" So I'm going to give you a little reminder of what I said in the last video about this in the Sunday address. He claims that he's been a big success with this strike. It's been a huge success. Why, they've eliminated the threat of Iran having a nuclear arsenal. And yet at the same time, Trump is threatening to carry out more missile strikes. So I guess apparently Trump's strike couldn't have been that big a success if he feels like he has to do some follow-ups. And now you have the exact same white media outlets who have been praising Trump's attacks and talking about how brazen they have been, now saying that Trump did not destroy those Iranian nuclear sites after all. And you have people who are in hysterics about what the result of this could be. Iran's civilian nuclear program remains intact. And as I said, Trump was already saying from the very beginning that there were going to be more attacks to come, so it's pretty obvious he even knew then that he hadn't exactly hit the bullseye. So what I want to know is, where is all of this World War III talk coming from? It's because the white media says this about every breakout of hostilities. If it bleeds, it leads, but if it scares, that makes it even more newsworthy. The white media knows that they're pushing buttons, but apparently too many black folks don't, especially those who are on the take. There was also something else that I had told you. I said that before it was all over, these people would once more be getting back to getting along with one another and closing ranks against us. I told you that all those countries over there are not getting up in arms about Iran being attacked either. You can't have a world war if the Arab world is shrugging its shoulders and the rest of the world is doing nothing more than saying tisk tisk. A lot of those same Iranians come to the U.S., they open businesses in black neighborhoods, and then treat us like every other anti-black racist does. These are not people who make common cause with us. My heart goes out to people who have allied themselves with me, not people who have decided to put distance between themselves and me. The squabbles that these people have in the Middle East are basically no more politically relevant than what the Irish and the English were brawling about in the 19th and 20th centuries. They'll be blowing each other up over there, and yet the moment that they set foot in the United States, suddenly they're chummy and best buds with those exact same people, because they can all take part in oppressing us. That's the unifying principle of white supremacy. And everybody who comes over here wants to be part of it. Hell, a lot of people who never set foot over here want to be part of it. Okay, as the black media has been focusing on things that are actually important, clearly the asinine talking points have made the rounds from DNC headquarters, and what they're doing is they got their little online shills and trolls who've decided that they're going to be spreading the propaganda, and we see how good a job they've been doing. Trump's going to take us into World War III, and that talking point in particular is one that the black community could stand to drop. Every few years, it seems, we have the talking point of so-and-so's going to get us into World War III. People who have been saying that since at least the 1980s with Ronald Reagan. Now, some people live their lives, if they can be called that, entirely online. They're ignorant and they don't think, so they listen to other people who are equally ignorant and don't think, and can't be bothered to learn from history either. You didn't need a crystal ball to see how the situation in Iran was going to play out. The Israelis at this point don't exactly have enough ground troops to call themselves trying to take any Iranian real estate. What this is basically about is keeping Iran in a subservient position, especially when it comes to power generation. Iran wants nuclear power because of their industrial needs. As far as Israel is concerned, the threat is not that the Iranians are going to make a bomb. The threat happens to be that the Iranians are going to become an industrial power in the region, something other than yet another gas station in the middle of the desert. That's what the Israelis are concerned about. So it's important that the Iranians be in a position where they can basically have enough power to keep some of the lights on, but not enough to do any heavy-duty industries like the kind that they would need to be competitive against Israel. The Israelis are not even in a position to take over Syria. They'd love to do it because they're trying to spread Greater Israel, as they call it, as far as they possibly can. But they simply don't have enough manpower for it, at least not as yet. They would have to actually start taking some territory and subduing whatever dissident elements there are inside of it before they can move on to whatever other country in the Middle East is on their to-do list. So while it's obvious that the Israelis do covet Iran's oil, it's also obvious that they don't have enough manpower as yet to be able to call themselves sending in the IDF. Though I'm sure that Benjamin Netanyahu has a number of wet dreams about that one. But the point that I was trying to make with last Sunday's address is that the similarities between these people far outweigh any alleged differences. For example, as the black grassroots, we know that Iran is not an Arab country. They are Islamic, but not Arab. They consider themselves to be of similar ethnic roots to the Europeans. Or have you forgotten that Iran is where we get the word Aryan from? In fact, that's what the word Iran means. It means land of the Aryans. And I don't think I need to remind you that the Nazis were the ones who popularized the idea that Aryan meant not just white, but the whitest of the white. And sure, these guys are at each other's throats on a frequent basis, and that's because the nature of white supremacy is contentious even within itself. They can't get along with anyone, not even each other. But as black people, we need to understand they will really have no problem when it comes to closing ranks against us. That's always been the glue that's bound them together. It's been the only principle that's been strong enough to get them to take the blade away from one another's throats and instead focus on sticking the knife in our backs. Now, in a place like this, the B1, among people who have dedicated themselves to the destruction of white supremacy, I would have thought that I wouldn't need to mention all that, but we have plenty of trolls, shills, and just plain idiots who can't keep up with basic facts. We don't let ignorance rule here. I told you that before it was all over, these people would be back to business as normal, and the very next day the Orange Man was talking about a peace deal. Now, will it last forever? Let me take the suspense out of that one for you. Of course not. It never does. Do they have their antagonisms and their enmity amongst themselves? Sure, but not for the reasons that the white media tells you. Those people over there have been fighting a non-stop low-intensity conflict since forever. There's been plenty of dust-ups over there, mostly Israel's fault, and there will be more in the future. That's the point. Reminds me of George Orwell's 1984. The point of the war is not to win it. The point is for it to go on forever. And that becomes doubly certain when you consider the people of Iran aren't going to roll over like the Syrian government did. Go back and review my video about how the Ayatollah Khomeini was forced into exile and then eventually came back to overthrow the US and Israel's puppet, the Shah. The Israelis know this. After all, they were the ones who trained the Shah's secret police, the Savak, who, by the way, were torturing people nonstop, is part of the reason why the Iranians have a bone to pick with the Israelis, similar to how the South Africans have their own bone to pick with the Israelis, because the Israelis deliberately taught the apartheid regime in South Africa how to build their own nuclear weapons, which they then immediately turned on the South African people. Look, am I saying that there's no scenarios at all where there's going to be a third world war? Of course not. I didn't say that. What I was saying is, this one isn't the one. At least if there's going to be a third world war coming out of it, it damn sure isn't going to be like this. If the Israelis actually wanted to make a real go of taking over Iran, they know that they would have to do more than just send some cruise missiles in there. That will require the IDF to be able to go in with enough manpower to be able to knock over the place, and Israel doesn't have that manpower. At some point, you got to put boots on the ground and start putting boots to their behinds too. These white supremacists understand exactly where their power lies and where it doesn't lie. Even if there was a full-scale war in Iran, it would not change anything for white supremacy any more than the war in Vietnam did. And remember, the U.S. lost the war in Vietnam. But what happened afterwards? All of those Vietnamese immigrants came to the United States, and many of them were just as racist against black people as any good old boy in Mississippi or Alabama. It didn't change the calculus for white supremacy at all. You had people like Muhammad Ali who were saying, I'm not going to Vietnam because no Vietnamese ever called me nigger. Well, as soon as they got over here, that's exactly what they started doing. White supremacy understands what a genuine threat is to its power, and it's not going to tell you what that is. They're not going to put you on alert about that. You're going to have to dig or at least listen to find that out. They're not going to put it on the front headlines for you. This is the reason that we are the black media, and if you're not following us, then you'll always be the last to know. We don't follow white media hysteria. We understand the tricks the enemy tries to use, and making people scared is their favorite one. When people are scared, they don't think, which we see from the fools leaving idiotic remarks. Irrational fear was the main thing that I heard for years and years when I said that black people needed to withdraw from voting. Oh, but if we do that, what we'll get will be even worse. The Republicans will be in there, and what? That hysteria kicked into ultra-high gear when Trump ran for office the first time. Well, he won, and tell me, did the sky fall? Did they bring in the Gestapo to march us onto the cattle cars? No, of course not. Because they didn't need to. Because as I said a decade ago, what the hell are you scared of them doing that both of the major parties haven't been doing all along? That's the favorite trick the white supremacy likes to use, the illusion of choice. They've been playing good cop, bad cop against us for the longest time. If ever there was a group of people who the words, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself applied to, that would be us. We live in perpetual fear. Some of us seem to enjoy it. And the shills, tethers, bootlicks, and sellouts the white supremacy employs, they spend all their time trying to get you to be afraid. When Trump ran for re-election in 2020, the only thing that I heard was people saying a nonstop litany of, he's too dangerous, you can't let him get re-elected, he's too dangerous, as if they hadn't seen what had happened during his 4 years in office. Even after seeing that things were no different under Trump than Obama, people still insisted on being terrified. They didn't even know what they were scared of. They just were. Okay, well, Trump got voted out of office in 2020, Biden got into the White House, and then you had the white right-wing racists go on an orgy of anti-black message legislation and performative extremism. Not to mention the police understood they had the green light to go right back to killing black people again because Joe Biden told them he was going to be giving them tons of COVID money with no strings attached. He made it clear that he was backing the badge, not black people. Democrats controlled the presidency in both houses of Congress for the first 2 years of Biden's administration, and what did they do to protect and stick up for the very black voters who gave them all that control? Nothing. That's what they did. They did nothing. Now, how is that any different than what you thought Trump would do? Family, I don't really care about people's words, especially when they come from a politician. Those people only use words for one purpose, to lie. That's it, nothing else. And the white media, same thing. I look at what people do. That's what I care about. And a huge part of the problem is that for over 150 years, at least since the mid-19th century, immigration has been used as a political and demographic weapon against black Americans' demands and our determination to rise. Flood the country with non-black people, particularly those who come from cultures hostile to black people, and then later with complicit sellouts from the motherland and the Caribbean, following the gains and the pressure that had been put upon white power by the civil rights movement, they realized that they could win a game of optics by manufacturing the right kind of images that they could present to the rest of the world and falsely claim that now they had finally dealt with all of the racism that black people had been accusing them of. That's the purpose that immigration has always served. And the more we talk about the damage that it does to us, the more they get angry. You want to know why? Because we're threatening the system by threatening their ability to be able to use other people in order to dampen and undermine our demands. You don't get that from a war, quote unquote, in Iran. You have a lot of tethers and foreign flags who are scared right now because they've been hoping to get themselves jobs in some white government administration. That's why I outlined for you all the tethers who were working in the White House during Biden's reign, from Karine Stank-Pierre to that Ashley Etienne woman, and not one of them ever said a peep on our behalf in all the years that they were in the White House. They haven't said anything before or since. Stank-Pierre is out there pimping her so-called tell-all book, which is going to be nothing but her whining about how her Lord and Master Joe Biden was betrayed, etc. Nothing about how Biden betrayed the black vote. He claimed that he had our backs, and then no sooner than he won the election, he turned his back on the same black voters who were silly enough to support him. Democrats have been hoping that they could use the massive wave of immigrants coming into the country as a new voter base, one that would actually be compliant to them and wouldn't make demands like the ones we've been making. That's the reason why you got all these people who are scared of this issue. The Republicans are not trying to do black people any favors, but what I'm saying is the Democrats aren't either. And the people who you see in the comment section who get mad whenever we talk about immigration, these are the same DNC shills who were quiet all last year. You couldn't find them until a few weeks before the election. This time, the memo has gone out from DNC headquarters. They want to get the Congress back next year, at least get the House of Representatives back. But in order to do that, they need black people to turn out. And as usual, they're determined not to offer us anything. So they're using the usual scare tactics and fear talk. After all, that's white supremacy's only play, the same thing, just more of it. So let me go ahead and reiterate this for the people in the cheap seats. I'm not trying to make you scared. I'm trying to make you think. That's the reason for the title of this morning's briefing. The clowns who have been spamming the comment section kvetching about, we're about to have World War III and you ain't talking about it. Well, were they right? This isn't World War III, it's World War Z's, as in clock Z's, as in putting me to sleep. If you want to be afraid, you can be. There's plenty of things to be scared of, but the white media and their shills and bootlicks and tethers, they're not going to tell you what those things are. And in my case, I don't need a bunch of people who are shaking and trembling with fear. People can't think, much less fight when they're afraid. What we need are people who understand the threats that are against us and are ready and prepared to face them down. That's what's required, preparation. That's the reason why so much of what the black media does is based on telling you what's going to happen before it does. How much time did you see me spending talking about any sort of possible conflict between Israel and Iran? The white media are the absolute masters of dangling shiny objects in front of you. They want to see whether or not you got a short enough attention span that you can be distracted by any little thing, or in this case, by any big noisy thing. But the black media has taught you better than that. At the very least, if you don't see us sitting here banging the drum about it or going into hysterics about it, that should be your first clue that you don't need to either. Black people have proven themselves very good at being the champions for everybody else. See, that's another old bad habit that white supremacy knows that black people have been conditioned to have. We always are putting on the cape for everybody else, always trying to recognize everyone else's humanity while everybody else denies ours. Well, I'm going to make sure that if nothing else, I'm staying on point, and you will too if you're listening to me. We're not going to be distracted by every little thing that comes along. We're going to stay on target. Because the other thing that the DNC shills and these tethers and other operatives of white supremacy don't tell you is that when they're trying to get you to be distracted talking about the possibility of World War III, what you're not doing is talking about the real war that's going on, the real global war, the race war that white supremacy has been fighting against black people in general and against foundational black Americans in specific. We don't need anybody trying to clown us with any possible wars that might happen. We need to be keeping both eyes on the war that is happening and that has been fought against us for the longest time. That is the only war that I'm interested in talking about. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Jimmy Whitfield, Bo McLean, Logic Before Emotion, Tamika Hall, and Derek. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.